Three, two, one. Hello and welcome back to ESBR Boxing. Delighted to be joined tonight by Niall for a reaction video to one of the best women's fights, for some arguably the best possibly we've ever seen. Katie Taylor victorious over Chantel Cameron in their rematch. Niall, firstly, how are you? And yeah, being from the great city of Dublin yourself, sum that up for me.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was crazy. I will say, it's the best women's fight I've ever seen. Taylor Serrano was number one before tonight, but that was just incredible. And as you mentioned, as an Irishman watching it, it was quite nerve-wracking, but yeah, it was just a joy to watch and a great advertisement for women's boxing.
Obviously, in the first fight, again, it was a great fight. It was a spectacle, but I don't think it was on the level of what we've seen tonight. We actually spoke in the build up to the fight what adjustments Katie Taylor needed to make. How would Chantel Cameron approach the fight? And obviously broke down all the elements. Taylor was lightning fast, and she brought the pace to Chantel Cameron. Do you think it was that pace that won of the fight? Because at times it looked like Cameron was looking to land the bigger shots, whereas Taylor was coming in with a barrage of combinations and sort of getting in and holding sort of in the clinch at times and then trying to get back out.
I do think it was the pace that won her the fight, particularly early. I think it was the early rounds that she banked that kind of won her this fight when she done what we discussed on the breakdown. She box on the back foot. The Katie Taylor of old, we said, could she produce one more performance like that? Back when she was in her prime, on the back foot, amateur style, great point score, and then she done that brilliantly for the first 5 rounds. It was the second half of the fight when she started to stand her ground. Whether that had been, did the legs slow down like we kind of thought they would, or she wanted to have a tear up to please the crowd, but it was then that that was the fight Cameron wanted to be, close quarters in a phone booth, that war. And yeah, credit to Cameron as well. She played her part in an excellent fight, especially the body work up close, the uppercuts in close, to kind of counteract the holding from Taylor. So yeah, I think it was a tale of two halves, as the cliche goes. The first half was Katie Taylor, where she looked like her old self, and then when she started to slow down and have that war and hold her ground, Cameron definitely grew into it. So yeah, it was the early part of the fight that won it for Taylor for me, anyway.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it was a frantic pace, and it was sort of the old cliche of phone box fighting at times. Obviously, those fights can be extremely hard to score. It's normally the type of fights that you'll see a draw given or one or two rounds either way. What did you make of the scorecards? Obviously, we judged giving it by 6 rounds. There was quite a variation between obviously those two scores, especially. So, how do you think it was scored? It should have been scored yourself, and do you think the cards given were fair?
I think I'll start by saying 98, 92, was it? Is quite
Mm.
ridiculous and a big discredit to Cameron. I thought it was a really close fight. The thing is, people kind of, I've seen online and from people I'm talking to that had Taylor kind of clear by a few rounds in that range, and I don't agree with that. I thought it was very close, as I say, especially down the stretch. 98, 92 was silly. If that had been given a draw, I'd had no complaints. But I thought Taylor just edged it personally. But as I say, if it was a draw, if it was 95, 95, I couldn't have argued with it. It was so close. There were so many rounds that were so hard to score, especially up close, in the pocket. It was just so hard. But yeah, the 6 rounds was way too wide. But I think the right winner was declared personally. But as I said, I have no complaints otherwise.
Yeah, I think everything you said there is completely fair, to be honest. I think, like I say, as I said, leading into the question, it's those rounds are so hard to score, and it's a case of even like we've seen with the Reece Mould and Gary Cully fight, where Barry Jones sort of analysed it as, with Andy Lee, and Andy Lee said it's what you prefer in those type of fights. So, do you prefer the bigger, heavier shots, which look better on the eye, or do you prefer Taylor coming in, being the more active, landing the more punches, albeit some of them obviously point scoring punches. But like you say, it's what you prefer. And like you said, I don't disagree with what you said. I personally had it a draw, but if it had been scored 1 or 2 rounds for Taylor, then I wouldn't have been in uproar about it. The only sort of controversy with the fight is the knockdown. Um, it's a big talking point on Twitter at the moment. Do you think it was a knockdown? And do you think it possibly would have changed the course of the fight? Because obviously going into a 10 rounder, getting knocked down straight away, pretty much. You're on a 10-8 scorecard already. Do you think it would have changed possibly the pace or the outlook of the fight at all?
Yeah, first of all, I do think it was a knockdown. You know, the replay showed that she kind of stabbed the jab in there. It was a flash knockdown. She wasn't hurt, but it was, I think it was a knockdown, and it's a pity because that's gonna, as you mentioned, that's a talking point already. After such a great fight, there's controversy over that should have been scored a knockdown for Chantel Cameron. And to your second point, I do think it would have changed the fight because, as you say, you know, Katie Taylor probably would have had to push the pace more from that point on, you know, and not box so much on the back foot like she was early, you know, being on the back of a 10-8 round. So yeah, that's a real shame that that wasn't scored a knockdown, just to give Cameron her credit, you know. So yeah, it's a pity, but as I say, great fight overall. We were treated there to a great encounter.
Yeah, I completely agree with yourself. I think, especially in a 10 rounder, if you're essentially 2 rounds down after the first round, um, it's you've got to force it a bit more, and you've got to assert dominance nice and early. Obviously, two fights, it's 1-1. I think it's fair that it is 1-1. Obviously, we've spoke about it off camera. What's next? Do you want to see the trilogy? Do you think the trilogy is the right fight, or is it a case of should Katie Taylor now sail off into the sunset as Ireland's greatest sports person?
Yeah, this is a hard one, as you mentioned. We kind of discussed it earlier for a little bit, and it's going to be a biased opinion, but you know, the kind of admiration I have for Kate Taylor, I think she has to retire now on that. You know, she's just slowed down too much, and there's no shame in it. It's a great career, but she's not what she once was, you know, and I think if she does carry on, she will be beaten again or stopped, you know, but in the interest of boxing, I think Cameron deserves the rematch. It's settled perfectly now at 1-1. And especially after that, such a classic fight, that'll leave people wanting more. So I do think I want to see the rematch, to be honest, from a pure boxing fan's perspective.
Mhm.
Whether that be in Dublin or over in England, I don't know. But yeah, the trilogy I think makes the most sense to be next.
Yeah, again, I completely agree with yourself. I mean, we're becoming quite famous saying it on this channel, but again, from a boxing perspective, I think we should have the trilogy. But I think the way you've analysed it is perfect. I think at this stage, the career she's had has been unbelievable. The fights she's been in have been unbelievable. Um, Obviously, they should be fighting 12 3-minute rounds. And like you say, she has slowed down Katie Taylor. So if obviously with Amanda Serrano being the pilot for the 3-minute round, sorry, if they do it again, I think, like you say, I could see a Cameron stoppage with the extra time added on later on into the fight as the legs start to tire. And on the back of the career she's had, why not go out on top? I say it all the time. I know fighters, they don't necessarily see it from almost like a fan or an analyst perspective, but I think, like you said, from a boxing point of view, the trilogy makes sense. But I think the sailing off into the sunset as the undisputed champion on the back of a great win in Dublin, it's the perfect scenario. But Niall, thank you for joining me tonight on the back of an unbelievable contest. A good night of boxing overall, but the main event was incredible. Let us know what you thought, guys, in the comments below. Let us know if you thought it wasn't a knockdown, if you thought Chantal Cameron won, if the scorecards were fair. Like, subscribe, and yeah, once again, Niall, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, great talking. Take care.